Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Fourmation Podcast. I believe this is episode number 26. And if you watched last week, you will know that we said that was going to be our last one under in different areas of the UK. And if you're watching this episode, then you will already be able to see I'm in a very different location because as we said last week, we are all now living in the same house. We're back at university, and it's the first time that we're recording one of these podcast episodes while all under the same roof. Just to try and prove that to you, I can tell you that Devon is directly above me in the room now. We did say last week we didn't know how it was going to work in terms of are we going to record in the same room? Are we going to record on Zoom/Skype? For this first episode, we've decided to go with this method purely because we wanted to make sure that both the YouTube version of the pod and all of the audio-only versions of the pod were up to standard. We didn't want to prioritise one and then let the other suffer. So this is what we've gone with for now. Let us know what you think of this. We're going to try, if we can, and get it a bit better, maybe try and rent out a camera or something like that. But as the weeks go on, you will, of course, see whether we make changes or not. But anyway, we're back in the same house. Sam, we've kind of had a few days of socialising and watching football, but it's good to be back, isn't it?
Yes, good to be back, having some normality. Been into uni once already, which is good. Obviously, it's getting into a bit of a lull while I was at home. So it is good to be back to see you guys in person, like we said last week also.
Devon, are you getting bored of everyone yet? I know it was excitement at first, but are you getting sick of everyone's company, or is it still fresh?
Well, as you can see, the door's locked to keep them four out. No, it's good to be back, obviously, and you know, George's antics in the kitchen have begun.
Antics? Well, I won't expand.
All right, gyrating hips then.
I won't expand on any more of that. We'll just let the viewers and listeners use their imaginations. Harry, this week's episode is going to have a specific focus on the Champions League, and we watched a couple of those games in our living room with our new TV provided by Devon's Gran. How impressed have you been with those games? And it's been great entertainment, hasn't it?
That's what you get from the Champions League. You know, those, I say one-off games, those two-off games, but specifically the second leg, where one team normally has to really fight to get back into the game. We look at Juventus, for example. They had to try and overturn what, to be fair, was going to be an upset and was an upset. And that one's, it's going to be all-out attack, and that's exactly what we got, goals left, right and centre.
Yeah, well, you've teed us up nicely there, Harry, with that link to the Juventus one, because we want to talk through some of the results that have taken place this week, because there have been some really good ones. And we will start in Turin, where Juventus took on Porto. Juventus came into it 2-1 down after the first leg. So as Harry said, they had to go for it. And at the end of the 90 minutes on the night, Juventus were 2-1 up, which went into extra time. It was 3-3 on aggregate. So 30 minutes extra was called into play. And in the end, it was Porto, the underdogs, as Harry said, who went through. Sergio Oliveira scored with 5 minutes of extra time left to send them through. That was on away goals because Juve got one back soon after to make it a nervy finish, but it finished 4-4 in aggregate. Porto went through. There was a red card in there too. I think Porto had to play almost an hour with 10 men. So a big effort from them. But Sam, it was a game that had everything, wasn't it? I know we've already mentioned, but we were pretty captivated by it. And I'm not too clued up on Juve and Porto, but I felt like I learnt a lot more by the end of it. Would you agree?
Yeah, it was almost shades of the 2004 Champions League winning Porto side that went to Old Trafford and won late on. It was obviously I'd say a scrappy free kick almost that won the game for Porto. Szczesny would be disappointed, and also Ronaldo, who we're going to touch on a lot more in this podcast, he was probably at fault for the goal. And it's another disappointing exit for Juventus, who've gone out to Ajax in the quarterfinals and Lyon in the last 16 in the last 2 years, and now Porto. So there has to be a lot of questions asked of that side, who are 10 points behind Inter in the league. They've got a sort of project starting with Pirlo as the manager. He's not had any managerial experience before this. This will be a real learning curve, whether next season they, break the team down and build up from the bottom again. Ronaldo's future is obviously one that's going to be talked about a lot. He's got a year left in his contract, I believe. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it was a crazy game of Champions League football. It feels like we're always entertained to one of those games every season. That's why it's the best club competition in the game.
The Pirlo appointment at Juve, I see similarities, and I think a few people maybe pointed this out in the past with the Lampard appointment at Chelsea. And as we've spoken about in the past, Lampard had to bite the bullet in the end, perhaps earlier than everyone expected. But would you maybe be fearing the same for Pirlo at this point, even though it's still early days? But being knocked out this early with someone like Ronaldo in your team underperforming in the league, they're going to expect results eventually, aren't they?
I think it's Fabrizio Romano who tweeted today that he's planning to stay, and they've got a project that they want to build then, and they want to build a team around the likes of Szczesny, Weston McKennie, and players like that. Again, Ronaldo is going to be a big talking point with just a year left in his contract, and he's going to be 37 next year. So they might decide to let him go. It's not, when they brought him in, this is not what they would have expected to happen. I mean, he's won 5 Champions Leagues in his career. He's one of the best players to ever play the game. But you could argue that he's potentially made the team worse since he's come. And Pirlo, like I said, this is his first job. He's still learning. So it is going to take some time.
As for Porto, we've already mentioned how they sort of went through against the odds and now find themselves in the quarterfinal. But Harry, do you think moving forward into the competition, they can kind of benefit from having that underdogs tag on them? Is the pressure going to be off them now? That they should relish that, shouldn't they?
I think at any knockout stage, they have been the underdogs. I think it was last year when they played against Liverpool, they're quite by far the underdogs. But looking at that sort of fixture, they can go, look, technically they didn't win in Turin, but they won the tie overall in Turin, and they've got great home form as well when they play at home in the Champions League. So from this point onwards, it's just a free hit. It's just going out there, whoever they play against, and go, we've done this before. Why can't we do this again? It was a bit like Ajax of last season. They showed after they beat Juventus, and before that, it's just free hit after free hit. And if you have that sort of mindset, you'll play with more relaxed because you don't have the pressure on. And that's a lot of the time when teams play their best football, when there's no pressure to succeed.
Devon, did you see enough from Porto the other night in terms of their fighting spirit when they went down to 10 to suggest that, depending on who they get in the next round, that they could take this further this season?
I think when you've got winners like Pepe in your team, even though he's still, the ripe old age at 38, I feel like his kind of mentality that he showed at Real Madrid would drive this Porto side, and I think we saw that on Tuesday night. They did have quite a good quality. They had a couple of good, I can't remember his name, the midfielder, but he looked exceptional coming in off the left, and a few, like, obviously the mentality to go down to 10 men against one of the sides that probably was picked to at least make the semi-finals. And even though it was lucky, sometimes you've got to ride your luck, especially over two legs, because it's going to be talked about for a few years because it was entertaining. It was end to end. Juve hit the bar or the post, and both goalkeepers made some good saves, but ultimately, everyone loves an underdog story as well, don't they? Let's be right.
Very true indeed. We'll move on now. Another game which we were pretty enticed by last night in our living room here was Barcelona against PSG. They travelled to Paris, really up against it after the first leg. I think we might have mentioned this a few weeks ago when they lost 4-1 at the Nou Camp. It was Mbappe with a hat-trick in that game. And you'll probably remember the game between Barca and PSG not long ago, when Barca, of course, that famous comeback at the Nou Camp, but they had to do it again this time. And they put in a good display, but they could only manage a 1-1 draw. So Barcelona are out of the Champions League at the last 16 stage. Messi scored a screamer last night. If you haven't seen that, then go and check it out. He also missed a penalty, which proved crucial. It's an interesting one with Barcelona, kind of similarly to Pirlo. Koeman maybe hasn't had that much success so far. But Sam, do you think eventually, if he's given time, that he could maybe sort something out there and bring some good news back to them? Or do you worry about what the future holds with the speculation around Messi and everything else?
I don't think it's as simple as the Juventus situation. Like I already mentioned with Juve, they got some fantastic young players like McKinney and Chiesa and players like that who they can actually build around for the future. And I'm not as worried about them as I am about Barcelona, who have been through a lot in the last couple of years with the whole presidential run and Bartomeu, the scandals, and obviously Messi declaring that he wanted to leave the club last summer and all that surrounded that. So I mean, they put in a really good performance against PSG last night, and they had 10 shots on target in the game. They probably should have scored a couple more goals. Obviously, Messi scored that brilliant goal, but he missed a penalty also. And Dembele, it felt like he had a handful of chances to score, which were mainly set up by Messi, who had a brilliant game. So, it's the first time they've failed to reach the quarterfinals since the 06-07 season. And so it really is a change in period for this club, who have been so dominant in Europe of late. And it's gonna take a while, I think, for them to rebuild. I'm not sure, to answer your question, that Ronald Koeman is that man. I mean, he did a decent job at Southampton. Harry would know better than me, but really failed at Everton and didn't do much with the Holland national team. So I'm not sure he really is the man, if I'm honest.
Harry, do you have some sympathy for Koeman in a way that he's gone into that job in what is, as Sam mentioned there, a very difficult situation for that club?
I think he's sort of been put in there as a firefighter. He's never going to be the long-term successor. He's not going to be at Barcelona for a long time. I think he's the sort of link man. It's harsh to sort of say the sort of Van Gaal role in Manchester United, trying to bring some of the young players through. There was an 18-year-old, I can't remember the life of me yesterday, as players like Ansu Fati, who he's also tried to push through, that did sort of get a few minutes last season. But looking at that whole team, A, I can't see that. But B, looking at the tie rule, if they keep Suarez, they're through. Or at least they've got a much better chance. Like Sam said, Dembele really should have scored a few more yesterday. So I think it's the whole strategy is just wrong there. The whole thing's just wrong. And I think Koeman's just there until they find the right man. If it's just this season, then they'll probably find someone else instead of him.
Yeah, and as Sam mentioned, in terms of Barcelona's Champions League record, it's the first time they haven't made the quarterfinals in 14 years. So 06-07, as you said, Sam. So it's no mean feat from PSG, Devon, to knock them out. But how impressed were you with how they saw that tie out? Because, Barca were piling the pressure on and PSG kept getting in the way. Do you think they're in pretty good hands with Pochettino?
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity for Pochettino to really show that next step that he obviously wanted to do at Tottenham, but I think players and Levy kind of restricted him. Last night, I think, I do feel like, obviously, Barcelona put on a lot of pressure. However, looking at that PSG side, it seems like they never really got out of first gear, especially midfielder. Gay were winning all the midfield battles, and they were just getting it to Mbappe, and Mbappe did his stuff either, getting into the area, or he just frustrate, pull it back, let everyone come forward. And Barcelona were it seemed like they were trying to play Pep Guardiola football without the players there. They just looked completely inept of, even some of the passing chains. Messi would give it to someone, he'd be looking for the return, they'd play it back to Busquets, and it was kind of just in a way negative. But obviously it could have been a completely different story if Dembele wasn't pretending he was a PSG defender, should we say.
Yeah, there were another couple of last 16 ties which have been concluded earlier this week. Liverpool made their way through to the last 8. They beat Leipzig, which is a big result for them given their league form. It looks as if their best chance of making next season Champions League will be to win it this year. We will come on to that a little bit later. Dortmund are also through. They beat Sevilla the other night. We will come on to what is to come in the Champions League in the weeks and months of the season that are left. But before then, we've obviously spoken about Juventus and Barcelona. They've crashed out. The key men for those two teams are, of course, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Who would have thought it, both going out of the competition at the quarterfinal stage? The last time that neither player reached that stage of the competition was in 2005. So 16 years ago. Messi is now aged 33. Ronaldo is aged 36. So there are some suggestions that maybe their time at the top of the game is coming to an end. Sam, would you agree with those suggestions at this point?
It did sort of feel like a transfer of power over these last two nights, with obviously Messi and Ronaldo going out, like you say, and Mbappe and Haaland progressing. Mbappe becoming the youngest player to reach 25 goals, and Haaland being the quickest to 20 in just 14 games in the Champions League. So it does feel like a passing of the torch in a way. But I don't think this is the end for Ronaldo, or in particular Messi, who's had another great season, to be honest. I mean, Mbappe's got 10 goals in 2021, Haaland's got 14, Messi's got 15. And like I said already, he probably should have had more than he got last night with the amount of chances he created, in particular for Dembele. And that's the side to Messi's game, which I don't see currently in either Haaland or Mbappe's game, which is something I think they need to improve on a lot if they want to be considered anywhere near the level of Messi in particular. So I think it feels like we're over dramatizing it a little bit, because we're comparing Messi to, his previous years of absolute greatness, things that we haven't seen done on a football pitch before, when he's still performing to an elite level. But it does feel like with Mbappe and Haaland are really coming into their own, especially this season, and they're probably the two that are going to be at the top of the game for the years to come.
Devon, what are your thoughts on this? Do you still think Messi's got a lot to give?
Yes, if he had the players around him. I feel like we talk about how good these players are, but players can only do so much. And I think if you haven't got the required tools around them, you would have liked to have thought that the likes of Griezmann and that he'd have been able to step up and replace Suarez, and obviously that link has really badly I'm going to run out of not even superlatives, but dampened there. I mean, look at the impact that Suarez has had at Atletico Madrid. Messi's just unbelievable anyway, and he'll get the goals because some of the La Liga sides probably do turn up to the new camp already beaten. It's probably the next few years will be a success measure of in what he does in these competitions, what he does on the international stage. And the same with Ronaldo. I think, again, it's players around him that's probably let him down a lot. Maybe not as much at Juventus, because I feel like they've kind of got him there and he's kind of had to be, he's just there. They've not fitted him in any sort of system. But it would be nice to see one of them at least get another shot at a Champions League final or a World Cup final or something like that.
Well, as you mentioned there, a World Cup final, and with Messi, a lot of discussion surrounding him, say how much he'd love to win a World Cup with his country, Argentina, but ready and waiting as someone who could maybe take over from Messi at the top, Harry, Kylian Mbappe. So, at the young age that he already is, to already have a tournament like that under his belt. We know that PSG made the Champions League final last year. So Mbappe is leading them to these heights, leading his club and his country. So how excited should we be as football fans to see that it looks as if someone is able to, take that mantle and carry on with such top levels of football.
I think at such a young age, like you said as well, normally players peak at 24, 25, 26, whereas Mbappe is almost starting where Messi did when he was really young, and he's winning these massive titles. I think both Sam and Devon said, Messi and Ronaldo aren't done at the top level, and they're completely right. But I think it was Ryan Conway who tweeted that they're done at dragging bad teams through Champions League knockout stages, and I think that was what was shown yesterday. And I think Mbappe and Haaland are both now those players. He scored 4 for Dortmund over 2 legs. Mbappe scored 4 for PSG over those 2 legs. And without those goals, I know it could be completely different without those sorts of players, and different things may have happened, but they probably wouldn't have gone through. So like you said, it's going to be really exciting to see a player like Mbappe challenge for those level of things. It's going to be difficult for Haaland because with Norway, they're not going to be battling for those top trophies. So it's going to have to be club football where Haaland shows his real skill. But yeah, to answer your question, it's going to be fantastic to see where Mbappe goes in the next few years and where his career takes him.
I don't know if we'll ever see players like Ronaldo and Messi ever again. I know Mbappe and Haaland are great talents, and I think Haaland has the ability to, goal scoring wise, get on the same level in terms of numbers as Ronaldo and Messi. But I think these are just two Ronaldo a freak athlete, and Messi just an absolute magician on the ball that will I don't think we'll ever see players of those ilk ever again.
Given the growth of these players at such an early age, do you think that PSG and Dortmund need to be achieving success on a European stage pretty quickly if they want to keep hold of these two players? Devon, what are your thoughts?
Definitely in Dortmund's case, I think PSG have kind of set themselves up to become some sort of dynasty, and they've tried for the last few years. I mean, obviously the signing of Neymar was a big statement, and albeit Neymar's not really lived up to his former. He's still putting in the numbers and still fantastic footballer. Don't get me wrong, but and people still they kind of are quick to troll him rather than praise him. But I think with Haaland, the question will always be, right, okay, where's your next move? Whereas as Mbappe, it feels like even though Real Madrid seem there waiting at the front door with a pen and paper, it seems like that if Mbappe did stay, PSG could be the next big team to start taking over world football, a bit like what Bayern have been in the last 5-6 years. But albeit I think Mbappe's already done. I mean, he's got a World Cup under his belt, and it wasn't just like it was one of the young lads they took. He was actually one of the stars and the face of the tournament, and forced his way. I remember with the final goal as well. He's absolutely unbelievable. Whereas, like Harry alluded to, you're not going to win anything with Norway, unless Josh King becomes Messi. Then, yeah.
Or maybe get Alex Petty out of international retirement, but we'll have to see. Sam,
is that him to bring the Tetley tea? Is
that Sam? What were you saying?
The thing is with Mbappe is we could see either Ronaldo or Messi join him in the next year or so. I mean, PSG are basically backed by a whole country in Qatar. They've got a wealth of resources. So Messi has been heavily linked with PSG last season when he was saying that he wanted to leave, and they're one of very few clubs that could probably afford him. So if Mbappe was to stay and Messi was to join him and Neymar at PSG, it'd be hard to see them not doing a lot really in European football.
There have been a few links as well surrounding Haaland and English clubs. Off the top of my memory, I'm thinking Chelsea. I can remember seeing some links to him, and I know that Manchester City and Liverpool always seem to be mentioned in that discussion. Harry, is there any club in particular who you think he would suit, or do you think someone of his ilk would just fit into any team?
He'd go anywhere. You change teams to get Haaland into your team. Even if he goes to PSG, you put Neymar and Mbappe on the wings or Messi on the wing. But for me, he's got to go to a top club that's going to guarantee trophies or come as close as possible. Teams like Manchester United and Chelsea are linked with him. For those, I think he's going to have to wait 2 or 3 years before he sees the final product. Whereas with Manchester City, with Liverpool, with Barcelona need a number 9 at the moment. Why not go there? There's teams that are almost guaranteed to win trophies. So I think he needs to go on that sort of level if he wants to keep up with Mbappe, because Mbappe's already there. He's already at a team that's guaranteed 2 trophies a year in the domestic competition and the cup, and he's someone that could definitely battle Dani Alves to be the most decorated footballer of all time. I'm pretty sure he holds that anyway.
For Manchester City in particular as well, with Aguero sort of aging and struggling this season, Jesus not doing much, you need to throw everything you've got basically at a player like Haaland, who currently is getting more goals than he is playing games. He's got 32 goals in 30 games this season. He's just a serial goal getter. So if Man City were to get Haaland, then we've talked a lot about them and whether they can be a dynasty in English football. That would certainly seal it for me if they were to get a player like Haaland, who has weaknesses in other areas of his game apart from scoring goals, but he just knows where to be to get the goals.
I disagree with Harry there. I don't think Haaland can go anywhere. A team like Barcelona, albeit they are quick going forward, but they are more possession based. I don't think that suits Haaland. I think so at Salzburg, so at Dortmund this year, they play fast attacking football, getting from A to B as quick as possible, and Haaland's been integral to that. I think someone like maybe Real Madrid or even PSG, how they're set up would absolutely make Haaland flourish, whereas I think Barcelona would really limit how he plays.
Yeah, well, it'll be certainly interesting to see where the careers of those 2 players go as we move forward and see if they can get immediate success this year too. Devon, are there any other players that you can think of who you think could go alongside Mbappe and Haaland moving forward as those top players at the top of the game?
There's a couple. These 2 suggestions that I've got written down definitely probably are not made the impact just yet that the 2 we've mentioned. But obviously Wednesday's not got any players coming through, and they'll be released on free, so we can't ask about them. João Felix, I think, went for a lot of money to Atletico Madrid, and although he started off bad, now he's starting to really flourish and show why he's been rated that highly, and maybe a couple more seasons and he'll be doing he'll be doing the numbers. But I don't think for now anyway it's probably going to be when he gets hits like 24, 25, that's when we'll really see him. Whereas these 2, the aforementioned Mbappe and Haaland are really coming into the peak way before the peak, so which is a scary thought. Also, we've all seen him at Derby at Pride Park. I'm going to really butcher this now, but Yusufu Moukoko, he's really, especially at the younger age groups, he's just bullied his way through to the first team and said, look, I'm going to make an impact. And I think he scored on his debut a very good goal, because he's the youngest ever goal scorer in the Bundesliga. He's one that could be scarily good. And I believe he's still just 16. So he could be very scary, and he could be tapping Haaland on the shoulder and said, you know what, you go off, I'm going to take this.
Some decent suggestions there. I would just say before asking someone else, kudos for that pronunciation there. I don't think I could have done that any better myself, Dev. I'm not even going to try. So Moukoko, there you go. I hope you're impressed with that. Sam, Harry, are there any other players that come to mind? I must say,
Smallbone.
I thought when Devon said we've all seen him, I maybe thought of Phil Foden. I don't know whether.
Yeah, I did as well, to be fair. But he was already in my thoughts, to be fair, Foden. From what he's really come of age this season, especially at Manchester City with David Silva leaving the club, he's had to take a lot more on his young shoulders, and he has done so. And he's, as we discussed in our Euros video, he's within contention of starting for England at those Euros, and he could really announce himself on the world stage if he does play well in that tournament. Obviously, there's another player at Dortmund, another English player, I think, Jadon Sancho. He's done really well, and having that experience of playing in a foreign country, and he's really had to mature in that role at Dortmund, and he's done really well. Maybe not hit the heights this season that he did in the previous, but I think his next move is going to be a big one, in whether he announces himself on the same sort of podium as Haaland and Mbappe.
Harry, I saw you sit back in your chair almost in disappointment on that Sam's mention of Jadon Sancho there. Would that be your suggestion on this one?
It wasn't just that. I knew as soon as Devon says we've seen him all before. I knew he was going to mention Makuku, because I was going to make a joke about him being born in 2004 and him being so much younger than all of us. So I was like, at least I got one more name. And then Sam pops up with Sancho, who's how is he still 20? It feels like he's been around for ages, but a 20-year-old who has got, apart from this season where he still had decent numbers, ridiculous numbers the 2 seasons before. So I think those two are certainly the 2 players to really look out for. But as we've said, Mbappe and Haaland are well out in front at the moment. They're going to take some catching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we mentioned attacking talent. Is there any sort of maybe defenders that might take that Cannavaro Ballon d'Or stat away from him? Maybe will we see someone like Trent? I know he's a right back, but Trent was on a path to be one of the best defenders in the world, and he's kind of this season taken a hit. Is there anyone else that could take that role? Maybe Upamecano or anyone, just for the pronunciation, anyone that might take that defensive rock?
I quite like the Trent suggestion, but as you said, it's hard after this season to maybe rank him and be certain that he's going to push for that. I would be very surprised if he didn't recover for this. It seems as if it's been a bit of a freak season for Liverpool. But hopefully, as an England fan, that he is able to, find his form, especially this coming summer. Does anyone have any other names to put forward for that category?
I think if Van Dijk was 2 or 3 years younger, you could probably chuck a case in for him. But apart from that, Diaz, he's came into Manchester City and he's really made that defence seriously strong, sort of a Vincent Kompany long-term replacement if he decides to be there. And Manchester City can be that global superpower if Liverpool not keep curtailing, but if they don't improve at the same level, then he can certainly be there. But yeah, I agree with the Trent option as well. His assist numbers bar this season have been absolutely off the charts. And once again, he's still a very, very young player. And every team's going to have an off season. I wouldn't be surprised if next season, when they've got Virgil van Dijk back, they're going to be as strong as they ever have been before. So I think that's definitely a shout that could well be up there.
We're saying that team's having an off season, but Dortmund are very much having an off season, and Haaland is just Haaland. And even though Sancho's starting to come into his own, and maybe even someone like Jude Bellingham could develop. Because remember, you've got to remember his age. He's probably 2-3 years off. You'd expect to really be challenging at the top level. And when again, it's all about the development. Because if it seems like players like Jude Bellingham have really been, a wing over his shoulder at Dortmund, and he's starting to come into his own now, especially as he got high regard the other night against Sevilla.
I think if we're talking defenders, I also want to mention Alfonso Davies at Bayern as well. I think of 2 performances in particular in the Champions League last season where he really impressed me. Chelsea away, where he got 2 assists, I think, and just tore the Chelsea defensive part, and also that hammering of Barcelona in the quarterfinals, I think, the 8-2, and he just showed his electrifying pace and also attacking abilities, which I think are on par with Trent, who we've already mentioned. I think he's signed his future at Bayern, who are part of the European elite, and he can really grow there into one of the best defenders in the world as well.
I mean, he replaced the last best left back in the world, David Alaba, and forced him to change positions. So that's saying a lot, really.
Yeah, plenty of players there with years ahead of them. So exciting times, especially if you're an England fan, because there were several English names in that list there. We're going to move on now. We've spoken mainly about the Champions League this week, so we want to look ahead to the rest of the tournament, and ultimately decide on who we think could win it in May. There's obviously still the quarters, the semis, and the final to come. As we've already mentioned, already through are PSG, Borussia Dortmund, Liverpool, and Porto. There are 4 more last 16 ties to be decided. The 4 teams who are currently in the ascendancy in those ties are Manchester City, Real Madrid, Chelsea, and holders Bayern Munich. Obviously, as we've already said, the Champions League is impossible to predict. So who knows if it will be those 4 teams? But if it is those 4, it is looking like an incredibly strong last 8. As it stands, according to the bookmakers, Manchester City are the favourites to win, with Bayern close behind them. So basically, we want to discuss some of those big teams, the ones who people seem to think are in with a good shot, starting with Manchester City. Harry, are they right to kind of fancy their chances, given just how strong they have looked recently? Despite that defeat at the weekend in the Manchester derby, they have been in scintillating form, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, they've been... Sorry about that. My camera tried to run off. But apart from that, they've been in the best form in Europe by an absolute mile. They're so far clear at the top of the league. They've been better than any team in the Premier League and probably globally as well, to be honest. And this is their best chance of winning the Champions League. As long as they don't come up against a French team, there's a good chance that they can make it all the way through. They're in a great position against Borussia Mönchengladbach. Like you said, they're 2-0 up. Hardly conceded any shots in the away leg. And I think if there's any year that they're going to win it, this is the year. They've had plenty of preparation. The only concern is they don't have a lethal number 9. They've done well enough without one this season. And maybe, because Aguero is going to come back and Jesus, they can play him as well. That's the only way that I can't see them at least getting to the semi-finals. That's got to be a minimum for them, as long as they don't come up against a team like PSG or Bayern Munich in the next round. I'm not sure how the draw works, but yeah, as long as they, don't come up against one of those two or back to back, there's a definite chance that they will win the Champions League this season.
I mean, we were watching the Saints game and we were talking about Manchester City's crazy squad depth and how Pep is able to just rotate his attacking players when he wants to. He's got Mahrez, Sterling, Bernardo Silva, Aguero, Jesus, Foden, De Bruyne. All these players can come up with goals and assists. And a lot is riding on whether Pep can be successful in the Champions League with this team. It's what it's all about, really, for him now. With the success that he's had domestically with Manchester City already, so I think the pressure's on for them. But I think they are rightly favourites because they've just got so many players, great players.
But I also think that they're in a great position in the fact that because they're so clear at the top of the Premier League, teams like PSG, teams like Bayern Munich, teams like Real Madrid, they're still fighting for that league title because they've not had great domestic seasons themselves. Whereas Manchester City can go, do you know what, we can rest players this time because we're so comfortable in the league that we can now prioritise the Champions League.
Devon, would it surprise you if City visibly placed full focus on the Champions League now, given that, the Premier League title is pretty much wrapped up already?
Yeah, I like how you reworded Harry's answer there. No, I think, they could have put all their eggs in that basket. The league, unless they have a massive tail over. If they were winning games consecutively and they had beat Manchester United, then at least there's something still there to play for, like saying, let's see how long we can keep this going. But now the pressure's off on that. They could probably just full focus. The only concerning thing is that Man City's temperament sometimes, especially in the Champions League, has been quite naive, and they've kind of just not adapted to any sort of style change on teams that come to their place, or they go to teams in other leagues, especially. I think the defeat on Sunday was pivotal. Partly of that, I think they got a bit naive and thought we'll beat Man United, and then they got a shock. So when some teams come at them, they kind of panic a little bit. But yeah, I think if City's going to win the league, win the Champions League, it's got to be this season. I think there's a lot of pressure on them to actually succeed in Europe, and this could be the time that they actually say, "Yeah, done it." And let's not forget they'll have done it with Aguero injured the whole of the season pretty much, and they've had a De Bruyne out as well for long periods, albeit probably the games where De Bruyne wasn't really needed in the Champions League, and they had obviously when the group stage finishes and the knockout starts. So yeah.
When I was listing those names, I didn't even mention Gundogan. He's got double figures for goals this season. So there's another one of those attacking players that they've called upon this season. They've got loads.
Yeah, we all seem to be in agreement that Man City are in a very good place right now. So clearly they have a very good chance of winning it. As for the other English teams, Liverpool already through, of course. Chelsea are 1-0 up against Atletico, so are in a good position. Both of those teams have had difficult spells this season so far. But Harry, if you were to choose one of them that you think could go the furthest in Europe, which would you pick and why?
Well, out of Liverpool and Chelsea?
Yeah, out of those two.
It's a difficult one because when you look at Liverpool, you can go, do you know what? They're going to put all their eggs in the Champions League basket. But the problem is you still need to put a performance in the league. And they don't want to be going down as one of the worst champions of all time. So they've got to get results in the Prem. They can't just sack it off completely. And you look at Chelsea and you think their defence is almost impenetrable at the moment, and that's the main thing you need in two-legged competitions. If you can make sure the away team doesn't get the away goal, or in one of the games they don't get a goal, apologies, you put yourself in a fantastic position. Look at they out Atletico Madrid at their own ground. So for me, I've got to say that I think Chelsea under Tuchel have a great chance of making a few upsets here and there, especially if they get a team like Porto in the next round. There's a great chance that they can get one stage further. Then it's really a chance, because at that point in the semi-finals, it's anyone's game.
Obviously, as we've already mentioned, we don't know how the draw is going to pan out yet. Sam, what were you going to add there? Sorry, I cut in.
I was just going to mention about Liverpool because, I mean, they swept aside Leipzig very comfortably in that second leg. They brought Fabinho back into midfield, and they looked a lot more solid with him alongside Thiago and Wijnaldum. And getting Salah and Mane back on the score sheet was really important for them. And with Jota returning, I think, like Harry said, they're going to be focusing mainly on the Champions League now, than being 7 points off the top four, being in terrible form in the league. So I would actually go with Liverpool over Chelsea.
It's a shock when Liverpool actually play players in their positions when they have players that they needed players in that position back or in there, and results start going their way. It's as if we've said this numerous times in recent weeks on the podcast.
Well, I just think the weakness is there they're not completely inexperienced centre-backs, but in the first leg when they weren't in great form, overall they still beat Leipzig 2-0, and I just think Chelsea's defence will be the main part of it. Look at the players they've got compared to Liverpool. I think there's so many teams that will just be able to transition quickly through the midfield, and then they're onto Liverpool's defence, and I think that's where they can break them. It's all dependent on how the draw faces them. If Chelsea get Bayern Munich and Liverpool get Porto, then it's a completely different story. It's all about what they get in the next round.
They can't look past Atletico just yet, Chelsea, I think. I mean, they're top of the league for a reason, and they've got to the last stages of the Champions League on many occasions. And when they got players like Suarez, who is still in fantastic form, I still can't believe they got him, to be honest. And yeah, they can't look past Atletico just yet. Yes, like you say, Tuchel has made them a lot more solid, but that's still a tie that needs to be won.
Before we move on, then, we haven't gone too deep on all of the teams still left in the competition. But as you know, if you listen every week to us, we love a prediction here. So who doesn't love a prediction? But let's give our predictions for who we think is going to go all the way to the final and win it. There's a few contenders, of course. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first? Has anyone got a team in mind? Devon?
Just 2 words. Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich. Harry,
Easy.
Sam? Who are you thinking?
I do fancy Bayern Munich as well, the current holders. I mean, Lewandowski's having another great season, 19 goals, and they've got, they've added Sane to an already great team. They've got young players like Davies and Musiala coming through, who have already been bedded into the team. So I actually probably fancy them as well. I mean, retaining the Champions League is no mean feat, but I think they stand a good chance of doing it.
You forgot to admit that they have the best squad in the world and the best CDM in Joshua Kimmich as well.
Goretzka as well.
Yep.
Harry, what do you reckon?
Neuer.
I want to go for the dark horse in Chelsea, but I'm not. I'm going to go boring. I'm going to say PSG are going to do it. They're going to revenge from last season's Champions League final upset. Because remember, they didn't even have Neymar in their last game. He's not in the best form, but he's still a phenomenal player. And with him in the team, along with Mbappe, I think they can go all the way.
I like that shout, the PSG one. I do think
that rhymed a little bit as well. Mbappe all the way.
I mean, with PSG's injuries this season, I think it'll take its toll eventually, especially in the Champions League. Not in the league because it's kind of the PSG Ligue, isn't it? But I'd love someone like Atlanta to pull it round against Real Madrid and go on a run.
Yeah, that's of course possible. Personally, I'm thinking that Manchester City could be capable of doing it this year. I was almost torn before we recorded this because I think the way that we were all speaking about them, it's hard to pick any faults with them anymore, isn't it? It just seems that they have got a faultless team. I think a lot of it will be down to their mentality going into it rather than have they got the players to do it. We've seen on numerous occasions how good they are. It's just have they got it in their brain that they believe they can win it? Because that's cost them before. But I would like to think that this year could be their year, but we shall see, won't we?
Yeah, it's down to team selection as well. So I think that cost them in the last season in the Champions League against Lyon. It felt like Pep was almost looking beyond Lyon, and he picked a slightly weaker team. And he's rotated his team a lot this season as well. And they've shown a little bit of frailties recently, but I mean, they're a good pick because they've been fantastic this season.
I think he just needs to keep it simple. I think I remember from last season, he just did too much tinkering, trying to do something extra special. Whereas if he just picked the normal team against Lyon, no disrespect to them, but Man City should be walking all over them. So I think just keep it simple, and there's a great chance, like we said, that they can go all the way as well.
It's time now for the final part of this week's episode. As always, we will finish with Sam's quiz. And I've been told by a few listeners recently that this is their favourite part of the show. So no pressure, Sam. What's this week's round on?
It's, the two players of our generation, really, Messi and Ronaldo. Talked a lot about whether their time has come to bow away from the game, but we've got a couple of questions on each of the two of the greatest players to play the game.
Well, the two players of our time, that means really that we should know a little bit about them, but I'm sure you're about to expose our...
Don't put unneeded pressure on us, George. You've already said that this is the most watched segment, and now you said that we should know
Got
Here
6
we go.
questions again.
Okay, 6 questions. When you're ready, fire them away.
Question number 1. Against which team did Ronaldo make his debut for Manchester United?
Is this in the league or Champions League, or are you not going to give us such?
It was in the league. I mean, it was his first game anyway. So.
In the league, okay. I certainly don't know
this. This is just a total guess.
George Best said it was one of the most exciting debuts he's ever watched. There you go.
Ooh.
A little extra nugget of information.
What's the?
Clearly never seen Federico Arcade. Oh, you get your. Oh no. Oh no.
I'll just take a guess. When you're ready, Sam, with number 2.
I think this might be a tough one, but Which manager gave Messi his debut at Barcelona?
Which manager gave Messi?
It's not. I could say it's not Pep.
Trying to think.
That could have been a great opportunity for everyone to go Pep, and then Harry would have guessed the actual answer, and then
It was
Are you saying
2005.
you know it, Devon? Is that what you're saying? I
don't think
did.
Norwich are going up. No, I
really
don't think
haven't
Norwich will
got a
win
clue.
league now, especially in the position. I don't know it. I think I
Yeah.
know it, but I don't.
I've got absolutely no idea.
You know
Once again,
Pep wasn't in charge then. It was 2005.
Just Sam. Just say that it might not be the actual answer, and just say that Pep might be the answer.
I've got
Might be.
absolutely. I've got.
I
absolutely
haven't
no
got the
idea.
foggiest idea either, Harry. Sam, when you're ready, let's hear number 3.
Number 3, the first meeting between his two players in 2008 ended with what score line?
Sorry, can you repeat that again, because it came up with 20% remaining?
The first meeting between the two players in 2008 ended with what score line?
Go. Do we need to say like who it was? Oh,
Who?
okay. I no.
Just the
Don't
score
worry.
line.
I've just worked out in my head. I think
I'm falling behind once again here, lads.
It must be.
That means Harry's got 3 from 3 now.
Go on, Sam.
Ronaldo was the first of the two to win a Ballon d'Or in that same year, so 2008. Messi finished second in the voting, but who finished third?
I think I know that one.
2008 Ballon d'Or. Who finished third?
That's the question I'm most confident.
Oh no, because it could be.
When were Ricky Lambert in contention?
Oh no, it's for me. It's one of 2, and it's not going to be either of them. But I'm gonna give it a punt, and we'll see what happens.
Go on, Sam. What's number 5?
Number 5, the 2011-2012 season was Messi's best ever goal scoring season. He made 60 appearances. How many goals did he get? So it's the closest gets the point.
Ever. And he's had a few good goal scoring seasons, I'm going to say.
Thing is, did he get more goals than games? That's the question. I'm trying to think, because I don't want to go like mental. I don't want to say like he's got 203 goals in the same season, but I don't want to go too short because it's obviously his best season.
I think you should say 203.
How red-faced are you going to be when it's actually 203, George?
Imagine. Oh dear. Right, we'll go for that.
I'm pretty
Whack it
confident. I can say for certain that it's not going to be that. I think.
If he's right, George, you have to admit that Norwich are already up.
No, I can't admit that. It's not a done deal yet. Sam, what's
Final one
question
is a 50-50. The two players, Ronaldo and Messi, have come up against each other 36 times in their career. Who has won more games?
Ooh. That's interesting.
If I just write GOAT, does that mean I get a point? Because it could be either. I mean, I probably shouldn't have said that.
Right.
Imagine if it's the exact same answer and it's just a trick question. They've actually won the exact same amount.
It's a trick
wouldn't do
question.
that.
It's actually
I wouldn't
Carlos
do that.
Puyol.
I'm just going to have to. I don't know any Barcelona managers before Pep. This is embarrassing.
No, I know one, but I don't think it'll be that one.
Yeah, I
That's the
don't
problem.
think it's him. I reckon we're thinking of the same guy, Harry.
Yeah.
No, I really can't think of anyone, unfortunately. No. In fact, we'll just go for him, although I'm certain it isn't.
See,
him,
you're
just
safe,
that I've got
Devon.
an answer.
I don't even know if you got the right answer, but
I don't think I have, but we can always.
Right,
pretend
let's go,
we have.
Sam. Let's hear these answers.
It's actually mind game, Sam. like how's the games last night, George? I enjoyed it.
Question number 1. Against which team did Ronaldo make his debut for Man United, George?
I've gone with Chelsea, although I really don't know.
Chelsea.
It's just a guess.
Devon.
I've gone with the one-time Premier League winners, Blackburn. And also got my Mother's Day card there to cover up the other answers.
My first complete guess of the question is Aston Villa.
Right.
Aston Villa. It was Bolton Wanderers, I'm afraid.
Dev gets a point because he said a team that begins with B. Thank you, Sam.
Never anywhere near my thing.
Sam, why was it one of the most exciting debuts? Did he score a hat-trick?
He did a step over.
I don't think he scored, but I just saw that somewhere when I was...
Fair enough. Question number 2, go on.
Number 2, which manager gave Messi his debut at Barcelona? Devon.
Now I'm worrying now, but I believe it's Ruud Gullit.
Ruud Gullit. Harry.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I just said Bobby Robson. I didn't know.
George.
As you saw while we were trying to work these out, I didn't have any idea. I don't even think this guy managed Barcelona. I've got
that was my other one. That was my other thought.
This guy who led Spain.
We're all still on 0 because it was Frank Rijkaard.
Yeah, never would have.
Oh,
he's another one that was.
That's the person. Oh, you.
Devon was probably.
I'm annoyed that I didn't think of any more Barca managers, but never mind. Go on, Sam. What's number 3?
First meeting between these two players in 2008 ended with what score line, Harry?
I just said 5-1. I had absolutely no idea. So I just put 5-1.
George.
I went with 2-0 to Messi.
2-0. Devon.
I was just thinking that was the year that Man United won the Champions League. So I'm thinking Man United won 2-0. But then I realised it's over 2 legs, so it's probably 0-0.
It was 0-0. The first leg of that tie, it was 0-0. And then it was 1-0 to United. The Skulls goal. So
I was thinking the wrong year. Never mind. You literally told
still
0-0.
Can anyone get a question right on one before?
It's not going well, this, is it?
So far,
quality.
I've named a team beginning with B. The manager that I was seeing in my head but thought was Ruud Gullit, and then the year and guessed it after I'd said the answer. So hopefully this one's 4th time lucky.
Number 4. Who finished 3rd in 2008 Ballon d'Or? Harry.
I went Frank Ribery, but I'm scared it's someone like Kaka or someone like that.
Devon.
But I put Frank Ribery.
Well, just to maybe harm Harry, I've put Kaka.
George.
I think it was the man we focused on last week, Steven Gerrard.
I had a thought about Lampard, but
it was a teammate of Gerrard. It was Torres.
Torres, was it really? I would not have guessed that. This is really not going well. I'm being told that our call is about to end, our Zoom call. So if you can, then let's rattle through these.
Number 5, how many goals did Messi score in his best goal scoring season? George.
I've got 68 goals.
68. Harry, what have you got?
I'm scared I went too little. I just put 65.
65. Devon.
I were umming and ahhing between 75 and I've gone with 72.
Devon's on the board. He was one off. 73.
Oh. And finally, Sam, that last question.
They came up against each other 36 times in their career, Ronaldo and Messi, but who won more games? Go on, Devon.
I've gone with the actual GOAT because I was just messing last time. Messi.
George.
Yeah, I've also gone with Mr. Messi.
And Harry.
Yeah, I feel like it's Messi.
And you're correct.
There we go.
Yeah, just sneaks it.
I've won a quiz. This is the first ever.
Yeah, it's a low scoring week. Sam, I wouldn't
Blimey.
worry too much about the standings. We know. I'll let you update them privately and maybe let us know next week. But Devon has won this week, so he sneaks closer to me at the top. But I do need to wrap this up now because, as is the beauty of Zoom calls, these are only 40 minutes long. We're on to our second one of this week's episode. So thank you very much for joining us. We're very pleased, actually, that our Wi-Fi here in the house has held out this long without a connection break, where we're hoping that is held out this long. So if you're watching this, then you will be hearing it. Follow us on Twitter at @the_Fourmation. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok too. If you're still watching, here we are. Look, we really are all in the same house. The Zoom call cut us off. You can see I was probably rushing at the end of it, but here we are. We will see you next week. We wanted to do a proper goodbye, so see you.